Pick up almost any bottle of water in America, and you're paying somewhere between $1 and $3 for it. Now, here's the part the label works hard not to say out loud. For a lot of the biggest brands, what's inside started as tap water. The same water that comes out of your kitchen faucet for a fraction of a cent. That's not a rumor. Two of the best-selling bottled waters in the country were pushed years ago to spell it out on the label, because regulators and watchdogs said shoppers were being misled by mountains and springs printed on plastic that came from a city pipe. But it's just tap water isn't even the alarming part, because when independent labs actually tested these bottles, most were clean, and a handful were not. One brand got pulled from shelves after testing showed a level of a natural toxic element above the federal limit. Another tested 3 times higher than everything around it for years. So which is which? By the end, I'll name the bottles that failed the lab and show you the one line on the label that tells you in 2 seconds whether you're buying spring water or repackaged tap. Start with the words, because bottled water hides its whole story in 3 of them. Spring water means exactly that. Water collected from an underground spring from a specific location. Poland Spring, Evian, Arrowhead. Whether that's cleaner is a separate question, but the source is a real spring. Purified water is the one that surprises people. Legally, purified water just means water that's been run through a purification process, like reverse osmosis or distillation, until it hits a federal purity standard. It says nothing about where the water came from, and very often, where it came from is a municipal supply, a public tap. Distilled and drinking water are their own categories, but the key split is this. Spring tells you the source, purified tells you the process, and quietly leaves the source blank. Hold that difference. Spring points to a place, purified points to a machine, and a machine can start with almost anything, including the tap. Now let's walk the shelf. Aquafina is the single biggest bottled water brand in the country. For years, its label had a mountain on it. Then a corporate accountability group pushed PepsiCo hard, arguing the imagery implied a spring source it didn't have. And PepsiCo agreed to change it, adding the letters PWS to the bottle. Public water source. Public water source. That's tap water, taken from a municipal supply, then purified through a 7-step process and bottled. Dasani from Coca-Cola is the same story. It starts with the local water supply, runs it through reverse osmosis, adds a pinch of minerals back for taste, and seals it up. By some estimates, around 45% of all bottled water sold in the United States starts from a municipal source, the tap, just like these two. Now, is that dangerous? No. Purified tap water is generally safe water. The point isn't fear. The point is the markup. You're paying $1 or $2 for water that cost the company almost nothing, dressed in a bottle designed to feel like it came from a glacier. Reverse osmosis is real filtration, but your city already filters your tap water, and these brands are, in large part, filtering it again and charging you for the privilege. Same idea, one step fancier. Smart water starts as municipal tap, gets vapor distilled to strip the minerals, then has minerals added back. Nestle Pure Life, on many labels, is treated tap water with minerals added. The bottle sells purity. The source is the pipe. So if half the aisle is repackaged tap, does paying more get you something better? Sometimes. Let's look at the ones that actually come from a spring. Poland Spring, Evian, Arrowhead. These are genuine spring waters, drawn from specific underground sources, not the municipal tap. So you're getting what the label promises, water from a spring. But here's where we stay honest, because this is exactly where these videos usually start lying to you. Spring water is not a health grade. It doesn't mean cleaner, safer, or more mineral-rich by default. A spring source can be excellent. It can also pick up whatever is naturally in the rock it moves through. And one of the things that shows up naturally in some groundwater is a toxic element we're about to get to. So spring isn't automatically the winner, and tap isn't automatically the loser. The label tells you the source. It does not tell you what a lab would find. And that's the test that actually matters. Which brings up something that applies to every single bottle we've talked about, the expensive spring ones included. In early 2024, researchers at Columbia and Rutgers published a study in a major scientific journal using a new laser technique to count something older methods couldn't even see: nanoplastics. Plastic fragments so small they're measured in billionths of a meter, small enough to pass out of the gut and into the bloodstream. They tested popular bottled water brands, and on average, they found around 240,000 plastic particles in a single liter, 10 to 100 times more than earlier studies had estimated. About 90% were nanoplastics. Here's the honest framing, because it matters. The researchers did not publish the brand names, so nobody can tell you brand X is the plastic one. And they were careful to say they don't yet know whether these particles harm human health. It's an open question. What they did find is where a lot of the plastic comes from: the bottle itself and the plastic filter used to purify the water. Read that again. Some of the plastic is coming from the very thing that's supposed to make bottled water pure, which means the premium spring bottle and the cheap purified one are, on this one measure, in the same boat. This isn't a reason to panic. It is a reason to stop assuming the plastic bottle is automatically the pure choice. Now, the part you've been waiting for. The bottles that didn't just contain plastic, but failed on something regulated. Arsenic is a naturally occurring element. In small amounts, it's in a lot of groundwater. In larger amounts, over long periods, it's linked to serious health problems, which is why the FDA sets a legal ceiling for bottled water: 10 parts per billion. Consumer Reports tested more than 130 brands. The vast majority came back clean, but 11 had detectable arsenic, and 6 sat at 3 parts per billion or higher, the stricter level many scientists argue the limit should actually be. Those 6 included Crystal Geyser Alpine Spring Water and Danone's Volvic, alongside a couple of regional brands. Then 2 names stood out. Starkey, the spring water brand owned by Whole Foods, tested at roughly 9.5 parts per billion, just under the federal limit, so legal to sell, but 3 times higher than the dozens of other brands around it, which nearly all came back under 3. And this wasn't a one-time blip. Testing flagged Starkey 2 years running, and it drew a class action lawsuit over its pure marketing. And the worst case, Peñafiel, a brand owned by Keurig Dr. Pepper and sold at major retailers. After Consumer Reports raised the alarm, the company ran its own tests and found average arsenic levels around 17 parts per billion. That's above the federal limit. Peñafiel was voluntarily pulled from the U.S. market, and consumers were offered refunds. One more, in the sparkling aisle. When labs looked for PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals, some carbonated waters carried more than the still waters did, with one popular brand flagged for higher levels. The still water giants mostly tested low or undetectable. So put it together. Most bottled water is safe. A lot of it is just tap in a nicer outfit, and the ones that genuinely failed a lab weren't the cheap purified ones. They were spring and mineral brands whose labels sold pure the loudest. So what does the bottle actually guarantee? The word spring guarantees a source, a real spring. The word purified guarantees a process, but not a source, which is often the tap. Neither word guarantees that a lab would find nothing. And the price on the bottle guarantees nothing at all. Some of the pricier, pure brands are the ones that got flagged. Here's the 10-second habit. Turn the bottle around and find the source line. If it says public water source, from a municipal source, or just purified, you're holding treated tap water, fine to drink, silly to overpay for. If it says spring water, you're getting a spring, which is a source, not a safety grade. And if you actually care about what's in your water day to day, The quietest truth in this whole aisle is that filtered tap water in a glass or stainless bottle sidesteps both the markup and the plastic. None of this makes bottled water dangerous. It makes it ordinary, sometimes more ordinary, and occasionally less clean than the tap it's competing with. The mountain on the label is the pitch. The source line on the back is the fact. So go look at whatever bottle is in your fridge right now, find that source line, and tell me in the comments, spring or tap in disguise? A lot of people are about to realize they've been paying spring water prices for their own city's water. And if reading past the label like this is what you're here for, subscribe to Behind the Label. The next bottle you pick up, you'll flip it over first.